The warm atmosphere of the New Year holidays that just ended suddenly turned into news that shook the South Korean public and fans around the world. Cha Eun-woo, who has always been known to appear calm, neat, and full of smiles, reportedly fell ill just a few hours after returning to the military barracks. This news spread so quickly, making many parties shocked, incredulous, and overwhelmed with deep anxiety. To make this situation even more heartbreaking, a nearby source said that the mother could not help crying since learning about her son's condition. According to information widely circulated among the military and corroborated by the testimony of his unit mates, Cha Eun-woo returned to the barracks on time after enjoying a short New Year's leave with his family. During the leave, she looked healthy, fit, and even managed to greet fans with a soothing smile. There are no signs of excessive fatigue, no visible health complaints on the surface. But fate seems to say something else. Once re-entering the strict military routine, his body condition suddenly deteriorated dramatically. Internal sources mentioned that a few hours after the evening apples, Cha Eun-woo began to feel severe dizziness accompanied by a high fever. At first, he tried to survive, like other soldiers who did not want to trouble colleagues or superiors, but the condition is rapidly deteriorating. His body was weakened, his face was pale, and cold sweat soaked his military uniform. Roommates who saw the changes immediately reported to the barracks medics. When Cha Eun-woo was finally taken to the military medical unit, the atmosphere of the barracks suddenly fell silent. Many of the soldiers who had admired him, not only as a well-known celebrity, but as a humble and disciplined companion, were unable to hide their concern. "He's always trying to be strong," said one of his teammates in a trembling voice. "We were all surprised to see him fall ill so soon after coming back." The news slowly reached the family's ears. The mother, who hours earlier was still releasing her son with a prayerful smile, reportedly burst into tears when she heard that Cha Eun-woo's condition required intensive monitoring. A close relative of the family mentioned that the mother continued to blame herself, wondering if she had not taken care of her child's health during the leave. She cried incessantly, even as other family members tried to calm her down. On the other hand, the public reaction came like a huge, unstoppable wave. Social media was immediately filled with messages of prayer, support, and expressions of concern. Cha Eun-woo's hashtag suddenly became a trending topic, not because of a new project or appearance on the screen, but because of health news that made millions of people hold their breath. Many fans claimed to feel as if a member of their own family was sick. What makes this situation even more touching are the little stories that emerge from those New Year's holidays. It is mentioned that Cha Eun-woo spends most of his time at home, enjoying his mother's homemade food, helping with light work, and being more quiet than usual. Some fans speculated that he had actually endured physical and mental exhaustion long before the end of his leave, but chose not to show it so that the family would not worry. Health experts consulted by the media explained that a sudden transition from a warm home atmosphere to a strict military routine can lead to a deterioration in the condition of the body, especially if a person harbors emotional fatigue. In the case of public figures like Cha Eun-woo, the mental stress is often multiplied by the weight of expectations that continue to be attached, even when he is wearing a military uniform. Meanwhile, the military reportedly took swift steps to ensure Cha Eun-woo's condition was stable. A follow-up examination was carried out, and he was placed under medical supervision. Although there has been no official statement detailing the diagnosis, sources say that the condition is serious enough to make superiors pay special attention. But until now, there has been no decision regarding a change in his duty status. In the midst of all that, the figure of the mother becomes the center of emotional attention. Some people who knew Cha Eun-woo's family said that the relationship between mother and son was very close. Since the beginning of Cha Eun-woo's career, the mother has been known to always be the biggest supporter, a figure who secretly prays behind every big step of her son. Seeing Cha Eun-woo fall ill in the military environment, away from home, became a heavy blow that he found difficult to accept. "She just wanted her child to be healthy," said an acquaintance of the family. "When she heard that Eun-woo was sick, she cried as if the world had collapsed." This sentence describes how deep the inner wounds of a mother who cannot be by her child's side when needed. Even the fans are not silent. Various prayer projects, messages of support, to open letters to Cha Eun-woo and his family began to appear. Many hoped the military would give him enough time to recover without undue pressure. Others reminisced about Cha Eun-woo's journey since his debut, his long struggle, and how he always appeared strong in public, as if forgetting that he was also an ordinary human being who could get sick. This story serves as a bitter reminder that behind the perfect face and almost flawless image of an idol, Cha Eun-woo is still a child to his mother, a human being with physical and emotional limits. Cha Eun-woo falling ill shortly after returning to the barracks is not only news of his health condition, but also of the longing, anxiety, and love of a mother that never breaks up, despite the distance and military uniforms separating them. Until now, the public is still waiting for further news with a hopeful heart. The prayers continued to flow, hoping that Cha Eun-woo would recover soon, return to his feet with his trademark smile, and one day be able to return home to his mother's arms in good health. This event has left a deep emotional imprint, not only for fans, but for anyone who understands what a child means to his mother, and the meaning of health in the midst of life's never-ending demands. Cha Eun-woo's sudden declining condition slowly opened the veil of a fragile side that had been almost never seen in public. In the military barracks, where discipline and strictness are unwritten laws, Cha Eun-woo's illness is more than just a medical report. It became a silent whisper among the soldiers, a concern for the superiors, and an anxiety that hung in the air from that night. Some of the unit colleagues mentioned that before he actually fell ill, Cha Eun-woo had sat pensive in the corner of the room, looking at his cell phone that had been turned off according to military rules. His gaze was blank, as if still left at home, on the modest dining table where he spent New Year's Eve with his family. No loud laughter, no exaggerated stories. He just wanted to go home for a while, recharge, and then go back to doing his duty as a soldier. But his body was not as strong as his determination. As his temperature continued to rise and his breathing began to feel heavy, military medics decided not to risk it. It is immediately laid down, examined, and closely monitored. The bright lights of the medical room contrasted with pale Cha Eun-woo's face, a figure that usually always seemed to shine in front of the camera. In that condition, he reportedly only said one low sentence: "Mom must be worried." That simple sentence, according to a source who heard it, made the atmosphere of the room suddenly silent. No one spoke. No one dared to stare too long. Everyone seems to realize that behind his status as a world-class celebrity, Cha Eun-woo is still a child to his mother, who thinks about his mother even when his own body is struggling. Meanwhile, outside the barracks, the mother lived the longest night of her life. The tears could no longer be hidden. She repeatedly awoke, looking at the phone, hoping for good news. Every vibration of the notification made her heart flutter, but none of the messages were really able to calm her heart. She kept asking herself, should she have forced Eun-woo to rest longer while on leave? Whether the home cooking she prepared was nutritious enough? Whether the farewell embrace was strong enough to protect her son? The family circle is also covered in emergency. Some relatives reportedly tried to calm the mother, but her tears continued to flow. "She never cried like this," said one family member. "Even when EUNWOO went to the army, she looked tough, but this time it's different. She felt like she was losing control." This news then reached the ears of the entertainment industry. Fellow artists, both those serving in the military and those still active in the entertainment world, began to show support secretly. Some sent private messages to the family, while others chose restraint, respecting Cha Eun-woo's privacy amid sensitive conditions. But one thing is for sure, the anxiety is real and widespread. International fans are getting restless too. Many said they couldn't sleep after reading the news. Fan forums were filled with long discussions, prayers, and hopes that the military would put Cha Eun-woo's health first.
Amid the rush of public attention, inevitable speculation also emerged. Some suspect that the mental stress of serving in the army is heavier than it seems. There are also those who call chronic fatigue the result of a busy schedule before entering the military. But the party close to Cha Eun-woo insists that he always tries to live all obligations responsibly, without complaining, without seeking preferential treatment. That is precisely what makes his fall so painful for many. Cha Eun-woo is known as a figure who rarely shows weakness. He smiles when he is tired, looks down when he is praised, and chooses silence when he is hurt. When his body finally gave up, the public seemed to be forced to face the harsh reality that even determination has limits. A few hours after the news of his illness spread widely, the atmosphere in the barracks began to change. The soldiers walked more slowly, the voice of conversation lowered, as if all agreed to keep calm. No one said it directly, but all hoped that Cha Eun-woo would wake up soon with an improved condition, return to walking between them, return to smiling even though it was simple. Until now, Cha Eun-woo's condition is still under monitoring. There has been no official statement confirming when he will return to normal activities. But one thing is clear. This event has left a deep emotional wound, especially for the mother, who can only cry and pray from a distance. The story of Cha Eun-woo falling ill shortly after returning to the military barracks after his New Year's leave is not just news about a celebrity who has been stricken with an illness. This is a story about sacrifice, about the distance that separates mother and son, about the obstinacy that is finally cracked by longing and fatigue. A reminder that behind the military uniform and the camera's glare, there is a fragile heart and a family love that never stops beating. Behind the solid walls of the barracks and strict military rules, the night went slower than usual. The wall clock is ticking like counting anxieties. Cha Eun-woo lay with his eyes closed, his breathing not yet fully stabilized. Every breath was heavy, as if his body was negotiating with itself to stay afloat. The medic walked in and out of the room with a serious face, noting the small changes that had occurred in his condition. In between his ups and downs, Cha Eun-woo was called several times to wake up and go back to sleep. In one of those brief moments, he asked permission to send a short message to his family. Not long messages, not dramatic words, just a few simple sentences that he typed with trembling fingers. The message then becomes the emotional center for the family that receives it. When the mother read the message, her body seemed to lose energy. The cry broke out uncontrollably. She hugged the phone tightly, as if hugging her own son. "He always calmed others down, even when he was sick," a relative said in a trembling voice. That made her mother even more devastated. From that moment on, the mother barely left her seat. She sat in the living room, staring at Cha Eun-woo's childhood photos, from school days, his first debut, to the moment when he put on a military uniform with a calm face. All those memories came together, making her chest tighten. Each photo seemed to remind her that the child who was now lying sick in the barracks was the one she used to take to school, holding his little hand. Outside the family home, public attention continued to grow. The Korean media began to report in a more cautious tone, aware of the sensitivity of this situation. But it is precisely this caution that makes the public's curiosity even higher. Many are wondering, how serious is Chon Eun-woo's condition really? Why did he fall ill so soon after returning from leave? And is the pressure during the draft heavier than it seems? Some former soldiers who are now social observers spoke up. They say that the period after leave is often the most mentally stressful period. The body and mind just felt the freedom, the warmth of the family, then were forced back into a harsh and disciplined routine. Not everyone can immediately adapt, said one of them, especially for someone who carries the burden of public attention like Chon Eun-woo. In the barracks, Chon Eun-woo's name is called in a different tone. No envy, no distance, there is only genuine concern. Some soldiers even secretly set aside time for personal prayer, hoping that their comrades would soon recover. "We see him trying hard every day," one soldier said. "He never asked for special treatment, so seeing him hurt like this, it just doesn't feel fair." Meanwhile, the mother continues to live in uncertainty. Every hour feels like a day. She tries to eat, but cannot. She tries to sleep, but always wakes up with the worst shadow. Her tears burst again every time she imagined Chon Eun-woo alone in the medical room, away from home, away from the embrace that had been her home. Some family friends try to cheer, saying that Chon Eun-woo is in safe hands, but for a mother, those words are never enough. She wanted only one thing, to see her son with her own eyes, to make sure that he was all right. Amid that silence, the memories of the final farewell before Chon Eun-woo returned to the military barracks after his New Year's leave came back to haunt her. The mother recalled how she refrained from crying when she took off her son. She smiled, hiding her worry, and told Eun-woo to take care of himself. Now, all those repressed emotions spilled out at once, without residue. Fans feel the same pain. Many write that they finally understand how difficult the role of a mother who has to let her child go, especially in conditions like this. Prayers continue to flow from different countries, from different languages, but with one hope in common: Chon Eun-woo is healed. Day after day, with limited information, every bit of information about Chon Eun-woo's condition immediately became a big concern. The public waited, the family prayed, and the mother continued to cry in silence. No one knows for sure when all this will end, but one thing is clear: this event has left a deep emotional wound. Chon Eun-woo falling ill shortly after returning to the military barracks after his New Year's leave is not just a story about an idol who has been stricken with an illness. This is a story about sacrifice, about the distance that separates mother and son, about the obstinacy that is finally cracked by longing and fatigue. A reminder that behind the military uniform and the camera's glare, there is a fragile heart and a family love that never stops beating. Time goes on, but for the mother, time seems to stop at the same point. The morning comes without meaning, the night passes without tranquility. Every second is filled with the same prayers, the same hopes, and tears that never really dry. She sat looking out the window, waiting for the news that could change everything. There was nothing she wanted more than to hear her son could stand up, could smile, could become Chon Eun-woo she knew. In the military barracks, the mood began to change as the latest medical reports showed little positive development. Chon Eun-woo's fever slowly dropped, although his body was still weak. This information has not yet been widely announced, but the news is spreading secretly among the soldiers and officers. That little hope is like a dim light at the end of a long, dark hallway. When Chon Eun-woo was fully conscious, the first thing he asked was not about his duties, not about the training schedule, but about his mother. He asked the medics to make sure that the family had been notified so not to worry too much.
The request was simple, but enough to leave anyone who heard it speechless. Even in a fragile state, his mind is still fixed on the feelings of others. When the news of Cha EUNWOO's stable condition finally reached the house, the mother cried again. This time, however, the tears were mixed with relief. The cry remained heavy, but the tone changed, no longer a cry of desperation, but a cry of gratitude that is still shrouded in fear of the worst possible. She repeatedly thanked her, as if every word was a prayer that the situation would not reverse. The public began to feel a change in mood. The anxiety that previously dominated slowly shifted into hope, but that hope remained fragile. Many refrained from cheering too much, fearing disappointment if bad news comes back. The media chose words more carefully, realizing that one sentence could shake millions of hearts. Among fans, a new sophoric consciousness arose. Many wrote that they no longer only see Cha EUNWOO as an idol with a perfect face and a brilliant career, but as a human being who can fall, get sick, and miss home. This story made many people hug their own mothers again ask how the family is doing, again realize how fragile life is behind the busy schedule. The mother herself began to put away her cell phone for a moment. For the first time since the news came, she closed her eyes. Her sleep was short, interrupted, yet enough to give her some energy. In her sleep, she dreamed of Cha EUNWOO coming home with a small smile, calling her as she used to. When she woke up, her tears fell again, but she smiled faintly.
In the barracks, Cha EUNWOO begins to be able to sit, although he still needs help. He stared out the small window of the medical room, looking at the same sky his mother saw from home. In silence, he calmed himself. He knew a lot of people were worried about him, and that gave him the strength to get up, slowly, step by step. But this event left a mark that will not be easily lost. For the family, especially the mother, the fear will always be there. For Cha EUNWOO, this experience was a bitter reminder that her body has limits, that obstinacy doesn't mean it's immune to fatigue. And for the public, this story became a mirror of the price paid by those who always look strong. Cha EUNWOO falling ill shortly after returning to the military barracks after his New Year's leave was not only horrendous news, but a story that opened the eyes of many. About a child who struggles in silence, about a mother who cries incessantly because she cannot be by her son's side, and about the love of a family that survives despite distance, rules, and uniforms. To this day, prayers continue to flow. The public was still waiting for the moment when Cha EUNWOO would completely recover and be able to step back calmly. And in that house, the mother is still waiting for the day when the door will open and the child comes home healthy, not as an idol, not as a warrior, but as a son who finally returns to his mother's arms. But behind the news that conditions are beginning to stabilize, there are other tensions that are quietly growing. The military doctors are not yet fully convinced that Cha EUNWOO will soon be able to return to his normal training rhythm. His body did respond to the treatment, but the fatigue accumulated over the months could not disappear overnight. Every decision must be considered carefully, not only for the sake of military duty, but for the safety of a human being who has forced himself too often. In the quiet medical room, Cha EUNWOO began to be more silent. He thought of many things, about a career that has come to a standstill, about fans waiting, about the responsibility of a soldier, and about his mother who inevitably returns to tears every time she hears her name mentioned on the news. In that silence, he finally realized one thing that had escaped his mind, that it was okay to be weak, it was okay to pause. A medic accompanying him said that Cha EUNWOO apologized many times, not because he made a mistake, but because he felt troublesome for many people. This is a word that will shock anyone who hears it. In the midst of a fragile condition, he still thinks about the feelings of others first. He kept saying sorry, the source said. All he has to do is rest. At home, the mother finally dared to pick up the phone when the relevant party called her back. Her voice trembled, her crying had not completely subsided, but he tried to sound strong. In that brief conversation, he only asked for one thing, that his son be well taken care of. No demands, no complaints, just a mother's plea whose heart is being tested. The night is back, and for the first time since the news broke, social media feels a little calmer. Prayer continues to flow, but in a softer tone. Many fans write that they will wait as long as whatever it is, that Cha Eun-woo's health is more important than anything else. The sentences become invisible but real reinforcers. The next day, an internal report mentioned that Cha Eun-woo was allowed to walk out of the medical room for a while, accompanied by officers. His steps were slow, his shoulders still looked weak, but his face was more alive. That brief moment became a symbol of hope, that he has not lost, that his body is learning to rise again. When the news reached the house, the mother cried again. This time, however, she cried with a smile. The tears were no longer bitter. There is hope there, albeit small. She imagined her son walking slowly, and in her heart she said, "Take it easy, there is no need to be strong today." This event slowly changed the way the public viewed Cha Eun-woo. He was no longer just seen as a standard of perfection, but as a striving human being. Many realized that the calmness and smile he had been showing might have been built on fatigue he had never told. Cha Eun-woo falling ill shortly after returning to the military barracks after his New Year's leave was not only horrendous news, but a story that opened the eyes of many. About a child who struggles in silence, about a mother who cries incessantly because she cannot be by her son's side, and about the love of a family that survives despite distance, rules, and uniforms. To this day, prayers continue to flow. The public was still waiting for the moment when Cha Eun-woo would completely recover and be able to step back calmly. And in that house, the mother is still waiting for the day when the door will open and the child comes home healthy, not as an idol, not as a warrior, but as a son who finally returns to his mother's arms. As the days go by, Cha Eun-woo's story is no longer just about physical pain, but rather about the changes that are slowly taking place within him. Those who have seen him up close say that his gaze is now different. It was quieter, deeper, as if he were dialoguing with himself. There was no longer an urge to get back strong immediately. There was only a simple desire, to heal, to breathe painlessly, and not to worry his loved ones. In the barracks, the routine goes on. A whistle is sounded, a line is formed, a command is given. In a certain corner, however, there was a palpable emptiness. Cha Eun-woo's name is still mentioned in the reports, but his usually calm and unpretentious presence is now replaced by an unspoken sense of longing. Many soldiers realized that his presence during this time gave them more influence than they realized. The mother begins to go through the day in a new rhythm. She continued to cry, but now at the side of prayer. She started cooking again, preparing food as if Cha Eun-woo would come home any time. Every time the smell of cooking filled the house, memories came back. She remembered how her son always ate calmly, rarely complained, and always said thank you. The little memories are the most painful. In one of the condition updates that reached the family, it was mentioned that Cha Eun-woo had a small smile when he received the news that his mother was fine. The smile was short, barely noticeable, but enough to make those around him fall silent. That smile was not the smile of an idol on stage. It was the smile of a child who was relieved to know his mother was still strong waiting.
International fans began to write one and the same message over and over again. It's okay to rest. The sentence is simple, but the meaning is deep. For the first time, many people felt that they didn't demand anything from Cha Eun-woo other than his health. The world seemed to agree to give space, even for a moment. But the emotional wounds of the mother have not completely healed. Every night she still wakes up, making sure her phone is close at hand. Every little sound surprised her. She is still scared. Fear of bad news coming without warning. Fear of the little smile she had just heard only to be a pause before the next sadness. Fear is the price of too much love. In the barracks, Cha Eun-woo slowly learns to accept his limitations. He doesn't apologize every time. He began to shut up, close his eyes, and follow the medical instructions without resisting. In that silence, he may just realize that all this time he has been running too often, stopping too rarely. The military, which he initially considered an obligation, is now a mirror that shows the side of him that had been hidden. These events slowly form a new narrative about Cha Eun-woo, not just as a perfect man who never wavered, but as a man who dared to fall and slowly rose. The public begins to understand that true strength is not about always standing straight, but rather about knowing when to sit down, breathe, and ask for time. At home, the mother waited, waiting for the day when the news is no longer about body temperature, medical reports, or rest permits, but about going home, about the open door, about the sounds of footsteps familiar to her from childhood, about a hug that was delayed too long. Cha Eun-woo falling ill shortly after returning to the military barracks after his New Year's leave was not only horrendous news, but a story that opened the eyes of many. About a child who struggles in silence, about a mother who cries incessantly because she cannot be by her son's side, and about the love of a family that survives despite distance, rules, and uniforms. To this day, prayers continue to flow. The public was still waiting for the moment when Cha Eun-woo would completely recover and be able to step back calmly. And in that house, the mother is still waiting for the day when the door will open and the child comes home healthy, not as an idol, not as a warrior, but as a son who finally returns to his mother's arms.